Willie Cauley-Stein out of them as well, in addition to Buddy Hield and that number 2
or
pick.
maybe a Harry Giles, which obviously is a risk. This is it's like a hopeful trade. Obviously, the Kings are getting the best player in that deal, right? I mean, I like Luka Doncic, but we don't know what's going to happen with him. I don't even know if the Spurs would draft Luka Doncic as number 2, right? Because there's other top talent.
Probably
I would want them to, and I think
they
he'd
would
be a good fit for the Spurs. But that being said, the only way this trade works is if maybe Divac thinks, you know what, my ass is on the line here. I've made some bad mistakes. I got to get a star, right? And then maybe there's a chance we convince this star, because Sacramento has great fans. They are in California, right? It's just kind of where Kawhi wants to play, and maybe he's like, maybe we can talk him into it. You know, I believe they'll have some cap space.
Oh, the Sacramento will have cap space. I'm not sure exactly how much this year, because for some dumb reason,
paying Zach Randolph, right?
Yeah, they're paying Randolph. They got to pay, I believe it's Iman Shumpert, who they traded George.
But next year, those two guys come off, right?
I know Shumpert does.
For
I
sure.
believe Zach Randolph does. 99% sure. I'm not going to say 100% sure, but yeah, I believe they come off, and they would have cap space. They really would. I don't know. They probably have another. I know they have. I think Bogdanovich or Bogdanovich or I don't know.
Yeah, Bogdanovich. Yeah, he's a two.
So they would most likely have some cap space. You know, I'm not sure who reported this, but there's a lot of reports out there that basically no one in the draft besides Marvin Bagley III wants to be drafted by the Kings. So that kind of tells you about how dysfunctional that team is, that literally only one player wants to get drafted by the Sacramento Kings, and most likely will be drafted by the Sacramento Kings just because he's the only one who is willing to go play there, like out of the top 5 or top 10 prospects, whatever it is. And that is just absolutely hilarious to me that nobody wants to be a part of that dysfunction right there. So it would be hard for Kawhi Leonard to be like, hey, let me be a part of this dysfunction. So it would really have to depend on the stupidity of the Kings front office being like, let's take this risk.
Which was what I was betting on it.
Yes. And it works financially, so it does make sense. Now, my first trade offer is with the Denver Nuggets. It is a package where the Spurs send Kawhi Leonard and possibly Patty Mills, but I'm going to go with the basic package. We're not going to really go with add-ons here. So I'm going to go with Kawhi Leonard for Gary Harris, Jamal Murray, and the number 14 pick. Now, the one problem with this trade for the Spurs that I will acknowledge is the fact that they're picking up 2 more guards. And they are, besides Aldridge, they don't have a lot of big men on that roster. Besides Aldridge and Gasol. Gasol has 1 more year. He's still productive, but he's old. But they are picking up a very, very solid player in Jamal Murray, who's a good combo guard, a very good scorer, a very good 3-and-D player in Gary Harris, and a number 14 pick. How do you feel?
Were you willing, can I just ask, was it Patty Mills and Fareed? Was that the other
Let's
two
go
guys?
with Patty Mills and Fareed, yes. Just trying to include Patty Mills here so the Denver Nuggets could get themselves a guard. Now, Patty Mills has
I do that. If I'm the Spurs, I make that trade more if Patty Mills and Fareed is involved, just because of the guard problem, right?
And you're right, and the Spurs front court problem, they'll be able to solve it with kind of Fareed.
And they both have, I think Patty Mills' contract is actually longer than
it is.
Fareed's.
He's got about 3 or 4 more years left at about $10 million a year. A little more, I think.
Yes. Yeah. So it gives the Spurs Jamal Murray and Gary Harris, 2 different players, right? Jamal Murray is a great offensive player, doesn't play good defense. Gary Harris is a very good defensive player, very good shooter, but small, right? I think that's the knock on him.
Yes.
It sets the Spurs up to definitely be able to compete in the West for that 3rd, 4th, 5th place, right?
Yes.
That's a good team. You even have, you're probably going to end up having DeJounte Murray come off the bench in that case, or maybe you could even do something.
Yeah, one or the other.
Where you even take Jamal Murray and you have him be the offensive player off the bench, giving you 30 minutes.
Or you could go really small and put Gary Harris at a small forward. I know that would be really small, but...
Yeah, there's some options there. There's interesting lineups that you could have, right? And you would trust Pop in being able to do good things with that lineup. Yeah, and I think let me look at it from Denver's standpoint. You have Denver's going to have Jokic, Millsap, and Kawhi at the front court, which is, besides Jokic, of course, it's a really good defensive front court. What do you leave them with the guards?
Well, they would have to re-sign Will Barton.
Okay, who's a good player.
Two-way
player.
Honestly, with the guards,
You'd probably start Patty Mills.
Yeah, I mean, you have that other guy they drafted, Malik Beasley, who barely played last season. Now, I think he was drafted the same year as Jamal Murray, so he's going to be a third-year player now. He's a shooting guard. We don't know what you would get out of him. He's young. He was, I believe, either a lottery pick or somewhere in the middle of the first-round pick. I don't know how much potential exactly he has. I haven't done much scouting of Malik Beasley. But yeah, outside of Will Barton and Malik Beasley, you don't have much. You just lost your first-round pick. Now, you have Plumlee. Yeah, you have a front court. You have Wilson Chandler still there, Plumlee.
Yeah.
What's his name? Hernan Gomez, who again, same as Malik Beasley, doesn't play much. Probably has some potential. Another mid-first-round pick, I believe. Watch him grow, but he wouldn't get much playing time at all. Now, I think what would be kind of fun with that lineup is you would have either, I believe your mid-level exception, you would have it either that or either the taxpayer or the non-taxpayer mid-level exception. I think it would be fun to watch him sign Rajon Rondo in that situation. I think that would make for a hell of an offensive team.
Yeah. I think it would be one of those things that Denver would have to do if they want to get over the hump, right? Denver is a good team. They have a lot of good players. But adding a top 2, top 3, whatever the debate is, player in the league kind of puts you at a good level. I think Denver thinks about it. Denver seems like it's a place where people like playing, right? Colorado's a good state.
Yes.
Denver's a pretty good city. You have the advantage of getting used to playing, at the higher elevation. I think Kawhi would consider staying there, playing with Jokic.
That guy's a young player, and he's a stud offensively, so...
And he's probably a fun player to play offensively with.
I can imagine. I mean, the Nuggets are one of the best offensive teams in the league right now, and you add them. Now, granted, you get rid of 2 of their offensive players, but you add a Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, I think that's both teams would consider it. I think both teams, there's benefits in that trade. Okay, I'm going to start talking about my second trade proposal, which is going to be a proposal where we send Kawhi Leonard to the Portland Trail Blazers for C.J. McCollum and a draft pick, this year's draft pick, which is in the 20s.
In the 20s, yes.
Because they won third place, so yeah. Actually, it'd probably be 2 draft picks.
Or Zach Collins. I think they would be willing to include
maybe
Zach Collins. I think they would have to be willing to include a Zach Collins if you want to get rid of McCollum and even a first-round pick. I think the Spurs
Yeah, because it's such a late pick. And I think, let's just say Zach Collins. I think the Spurs do it. I think it's one of the better packages they're supposed to get. They get a young player who is an undersized 2-guard, but with DeJounte Murray on the Spurs, that kind of alleviates the problem because you could have DeJounte Murray guarding the 2 guards, and then C.J. McCollum, who's not a good defensive player, is going to guard the smaller guard. Adding Zach Collins kind of helps out with the front court. He's young. He can shoot. He's kind of like small ball 5, right? He can work with LaMarcus Aldridge, an improvement. I think what it does for the Portland Trail Blazers is it, again, puts them a little bit over that hype. It makes you guys competitive with the Rockets and maybe with the Warriors. You have Nurkic as your center, right? You have a decent amount of 4s and 5s. Who is it? Alfred Gamino. He can play some defense. He can shoot a little bit.
Yeah, Ed Davis, if he resigns, I don't think Ed Davis is coming back just because of Portland's problems with money. But yeah, it's a good trade. It really is. Spurs get what they need. They get win now and they get something in the future. McCollum is still young. I think he's either 26, 27.
Mm-hmm. I think he's even younger than that. But
he's at least 26. Portland gets what they need with another superstar to pair along Damian Lillard. They break up that backcourt that they've been talks of them breaking up, but it's for the dumb. I mean,
and they probably should break that backcourt up. I think just the size. Both of them don't play real good defense. Breaking up that backcourt should happen, and if you get, obviously it's only guaranteed only a year, but you're getting guaranteed only a year from one of the best players in the league. And Portland isn't Los Angeles, but Portland's a great city. It's the West Coast. It's not cold there. So Kawhi, might think about staying there, especially if the Lakers can't afford it.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, we have to remember, too, that any team Kawhi is traded to automatically gets to offer him more money when he becomes a free agent and 1 year more than any other team, which I know it's not always a big deal, but, you know, if I'm sitting there and I'm offered $200 million from one team and $160 million from another team, knowing me, I take that $200 million, even if I'm playing at a little less of a place, and I might have a little bit of a less.
Especially since Kawhi is already going to leave $70 million, or maybe not 70, like $50 million on the table.
He's leaving a lot on the table if he leaves the Spurs. Yeah. So yeah, and it's like you said, the results haven't been there for the Blazers. I mean, they make the playoffs for what now it's been 5-6 straight years. They have a good team, but that's what they have, a good team. It's about time they become a great team. They don't want to skip out on Lillard's prime as a good team. They need to figure out a way to make themselves a great team. And this would give them a much higher chance of becoming that great team.
I mean, you have two guys then, because Lillard was all NBA first team this year, right?
He was, yes. He did.
A lot of people, the past 2 years.
Yeah, a lot of people argued that, but that's what happened. All the
they
voters
argue it, but yeah. I mean, if Steph Curry doesn't get injured, that probably changes. Or if Kyrie doesn't.
But it doesn't matter. Yeah, that doesn't take away how he. Yeah.
He was the one that played all year or most of the year, and you know he's a good player. And then him and Kawhi, it's a scary offensive team.
It is. So now we're gonna jump into my second trade scenario. Now, this one is very risky for the team trading for Minnesota, but I think it has a lot of potential, and it goes back to something you alluded to earlier in this episode. So this is a 3-way trade where the Spurs get DeMar DeRozan and Karl Anthony Towns. Minnesota gets LaMarcus Aldridge and Kawhi Leonard. And Toronto gets Andrew Wiggins, and the Spurs would probably have to add in a few picks to Toronto. But I want to go with just that basis. Now, let me review this a little bit. So Minnesota is obviously getting rid of Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins. Now, Karl Anthony Towns, to get rid of Karl Anthony Towns sounds like the stupidest thing you could do. However, you get Kawhi Leonard, you pair up Kawhi Leonard to Jimmy Butler. Probably a very, like you said earlier, a scary defensive duo. You have Jeff Teague there, you get LaMarcus Aldridge, who had a real great year. You're essentially, and as much as people like Andrew Wiggins, him on that contract, being the player that he is, who offers nothing more than scoring with a low shooting percentage, they have to be regretting that contract. So essentially, not only do you pick up Kawhi Leonard and LaMarcus Aldridge, you rid yourself of Wiggins' contract, and you get, you rid yourself of Kawhi Leonard, but not Kawhi Leonard, but Karl Anthony Towns, but you're getting something that you really need. Now, from the Spurs point of view, you get yourself, you get everything you could ask for. LaMarcus Aldridge is in his 30s. You're replacing him with DeMar DeRozan, who's in his 28, 29. Yeah. 4 years younger and a better player. Not a better player by far, but a better player. And obviously you get Karl Anthony Towns, who is an absolute stud. And in Toronto's point of view, you're doing something new. You get a player that's younger. You get a player in Andrew Wiggins who's 7 years younger than DeRozan, about 7 years younger, maybe 6. And it's just something. It's a new direction for them. Obviously, some draft picks would have to be included. They would have to receive some. Now, the one other sweetener maybe for the Minnesota Timberwolves to get this trade done is exchanging Gorgui Dieng's contract for Pau Gasol's contract with the Spurs. So maybe add those two players. They both make about 16, but Dieng's contract is for 3 years more, and he has 3 years left on his contract. Pau Gasol has 1. So he would become an expiring contract right when Jimmy Butler and Kawhi Leonard become free agents. And that's where the risk, it's a huge risk involved for the Minnesota Timberwolves, where if Jimmy Butler or Kawhi Leonard decide to leave, you're left with nothing. So I acknowledge the fact that this would be an extremely risky trade for the Minnesota Timberwolves to complete. However, if you could get some kind of assurance from Leonard and Jimmy Butler that they stay along with Teague and Aldridge there, what do you think of that trade?
There's a lot there. I think Tom Thibodeau looks at a trade and he loves it. I think Tom Thibodeau is a win-now type of player. Kawhi Leonard is his